This is Kyle from TrueStory.fm. Listen, I don't want to sell anything, buy anything, or process anything as a career. I don't want to sell anything bought or processed, or buy anything sold or process anything sold, bought, or processed, or repair anything sold, bought, or processed. You know, as a career. I don't want to do that. What I really want to do with my life, what I want to do for a living, is I want to make amazing audio podcasts, the kind you can enjoy wherever you are, doing the things you got to do, even if you don't want to do them. Without a noise, without my pride, I reach out from the inside and ask you for your help. By becoming a member, you get early access to amazing ad-free shows, plus exclusive stuff just for our insiders. $5 a month, or even one annual gift goes a long way to helping us make stuff for you. If I could say anything, I'd say this. Head to truestory.fm/join to find out more.
Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
What's up, Supernatural superfans? I'm Chrissy Lenz.
And I'm Nate McWhorter.
And we're the host of Gang
That Drink,
a supernatural drinking game podcast.
It's the podcast where we make up drinking game rules for a favorite episode of our favorite show, Supernatural.
We recap the episode for you and let you know how all the rules played out.
Then we let you know the drinking game rules for the next episode, so you can play along.
Plus, members get every episode early and ad-free,
with some extra bonus content chit-chat at the end of each episode as a member exclusive.
So download Gank That Drink, a supernatural drinking game podcast wherever the finest podcasts are available.
And or become a member at truestory.fm/gankthatdrink.
And when you're out there in the world saving people and hunting things,
you know, the family business.
Keep the Gank That Drink motto in mind. Be excellent to each other and party on,
dudes.
Hey Pete, ever wonder what Steven Spielberg's favorite film is?
You know, Andy, I've heard he loves classics like Lawrence of Arabia, Meet Me in St. Louis.
Imagine chatting with him about why those films resonate with him so much.
That's exactly what we do on our podcast, Movies We Like. We've had incredible guests like actress Dee Wallace, cinematographer Eric Messerschmidt, director Steve Miner, and former Disney animators Tom and Tony Bancroft.
They share their favorite films and the impact they've had on their careers, offering fascinating insights into the craftsmanship and storytelling techniques that make these movies so special.
If you're curious about the magic behind the scenes, subscribe to Movies We Like from True Story FM on your favorite podcast app. New episodes are released on the fourth Monday of each month with early access for our members.
Join us on Movies We Like as we explore the movies we all like with the people who make them.
And Stephen, our people will call your people. Let's make this happen, puppy.
Subscribe today.
It's easy to think of heroes as fixed in place, noble, capable, predictable in their virtue. But what if the most compelling kind of hero isn't a knight in shining armor, but a woman in a corset, wielding a sword, quoting Voltaire, and debating the ethics of romance while fending off a cyborg insect army? This is the paradox at the heart of Season 5 of the Swashbuckling Ladies Debate Society, a serialized audio drama you know so well. On the surface, it's about masked adventurers and theatrical swordplay, but underneath, it's about identity, about who we become when no one is watching, and about the masks we wear when they are. Today on the show, I'm here. I'm Pete Wright. You don't know who I am, but Kyle Olson has so graciously invited me to interrogate him about this season's thematic ambition about romance and reinvention and legacy and loss and crazy cliffhangers, and I'm excited to do the job. Hello, Kyle.
Hey there, Kyle here. Yes, I was very excited to do this because I wanted to sort of have an outside perspective because you're deeply connected to the show in that whenever people hear the show start, you know, that amazing theme by Headley Knights plays, and we say Ox Hare presents, which I am the hare, Ryan Fitzpatrick is the ox. That's where the two of us have our organization in association with TrueStory.fm, which is you, Pete Wright, and Andy Nelson. So another pair. So we have half of both of our respective pairs here to talk about this. So I know you came to Swashbuckling a little bit later. So yeah, you were sort of a new, and which makes you even more exciting as a person to talk about this stuff with, because you got to like go jump in and then go back and then sort of catch up and then be the first really listener to the new episodes as they came out.
I did, which is delightful. Because I think, you came on board to True Story as a host of Marvel Movie Minute now years ago. And that's when I discovered Swashbuckling. And I have since become a legit fan, Kyle Olson. And so I come to you as an exercise in fandom. And I'm excited to dig in. So now you need to be the guest and do as you're told.
Okay.
And the first part of that is I'd like to reflect with you on some big picture reflections about season 5. What were your main goals, your sort of hopes for what you'd come across and explore in season 5 coming out of the previous stories?
Yeah, I mean, when I first had thought of it, I thought we were going to be doing it live. and so those
were the days.
Yeah, those were the days, right? The first episode of it is live and was written that way. But by the time we got to getting the rest of the season, officially like episode 2, and I know that wasn't the case, because there is a difference in style that you write for a live audience versus people who are going to be in their cars or working out or wherever people actually listen to the show. So I knew I had to sort of shift focus that way. But a lot of it was I wanted to have an external threat that would sort of bring them together, as opposed and have it much more personal than the 6 who are sort of out there doing their own thing, but then sort of becoming more aware and annoyed by them, and then sort of this sort of the eye of Sauron turning on the ladies. This was the call was coming from inside the house. This was something personal, and they didn't know what it was, and. So even I at the start was like, I don't know who exactly this is. But then after the first episode or 2, I was like, oh, right. And it all sort of like click, 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 click fell into place. And then it is one of those, by the time I got to the end, I was like, I did play the annoying game of there was no way for anyone to actually figure it out, because it was information that I had that you did not. But I started to see that through the episodes so that people wouldn't be annoyed. Then they go like, oh, I thought this was going to be, this is Vicious Swab. This is going to be, there's going to be somebody from the past. I want it to be someone from their past that you didn't know about, but not have that come out as a cheat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it was sort of like there's this lost chapter that you didn't know about that you're not going to find out about until the very last episode. And then all of a sudden.
Right. There's no Rosetta Stone. Right.
No, exactly. It wasn't like I wasn't doing that thing. A lot of times can be really good of paying off people who are really paying attention. But I didn't want people to get into that so much and feel left out or confused along the way. So I wanted to have them, pretty much everybody, sort of be with the ladies in terms of figuring this out. They're only like 5 minutes ahead of you. So I don't know if they pull it off. I don't know.
Sure.
That's what I hope. My hope was.
It feels like this season feels like such a turning point for several of the core characters, right? And I said in my intro that this season feels very much like an intentional focus on identity and on reinvention and on confronting the past. And just as you didn't discover how the sort of malevolent factors were going to play out across the season until sort of episode 2, how early do you feel like you approached the scripts with the intention of those bigger themes?
When the live show thing sort of didn't happen and it was sort of falling apart, and I realized that it couldn't sustain, I realized I had to go back to the way things were. And for me, that at the time felt like a step backward, and I really had to stop and go, oh man, this was so much work. And like, do I really want to, I thought I was going this way and now I'm going this way. Do I even want to keep doing this? Do I want to keep the show going? It was, sort of the long dark night of the soul, and this was happening. And then I sat down and went, okay, but if you were going to do another season, what would you do? And I just sort of let that thought experiment. And then from there, like the next 7 episodes just went click, 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 click. They all just like fell into line. And I just wrote little 2 or 3 sentence things. I'm like, oh, that would lead to this. Ooh, which could lead to this. Oh, which could lead to this, which I haven't done this before. And then even as we got along, and there one episode was not part of the plan and sort of jumped in. and sort of stuck itself into the midst and then pushed everything else down. And then the ending became much more bigger than I had anticipated. But that's what told me that I wasn't done yet and that the ladies weren't done with me and that I had to keep going.
If I reflect from just my side of that conversation, because, as your production partner, we talk about this stuff. There was a long time, like that Dark Night of the Soul part you mentioned, kind of, out of the side of your mouth. That was a long time where we were assuming that you were done. And then overnight you weren't. It felt like that happened very fast. Which I think is a really interesting exercise in craft, right? Like how that inspiration strikes and you realize all of a sudden the vessel is open and the ladies have more stories to tell through you.
Yeah. At the time, all I could feel was the pressure and just was just tired and just thinking all the work I would have to do all of that. And it was sort of going, oh God, do I really want to do all of that? Because it's carrying so much, which we'll talk about as we get into sort of the production side of it. It's carrying so much on my back to try and get this through that I was like, oh, I really want to do this anymore. But then when I sort of pushed all that aside, like sort of took off my producer hat and put on my writer hat, then all of a sudden it was like, no, the stories are still there and they're ready for you. You just have to like pace yourself and be ready.
I'm curious how you plot that because, and I know some of this we've talked about in the past in the nature of sort of, are you a pantser? But you've written this sort of F storyline is really layered and meta, right? And how you approach that in a season that is both a mystery and a commentary on the nature of being tested and watched, and to do so with so much literary playfulness. I mean, you're tossing Shakespeare, you're tossing classic novels and in genre jokes and so much wordplay. I'm curious on the craft side, how you find you balance the intention versus the performative nature of your writing.
Yeah, I've always said that swashbuckling is the easiest thing for me to write because the characters just talk to me. Like I don't have to feel like, oh, like a lot of it, I'll write something down and go, no, she wouldn't say that, and I would have to go back and edit it. There's what one of the things I pride myself on, I think that other people have said too, is you could go through the script and you could delete the names and you know who's talking without even hearing their performance.
Absolutely.
That's something I try for. And so that it's easy enough for me to essentially, the way I write it is I have a basic plot of things I want to do. Like, okay, they want to have, this person come in, or it's a fancy dinner party. They're trying to conceal all of the things from Viviana. They're trying to keep her out of the loop. So the audience is going to be out of the loop. So there's going to be things happening off stage that you won't see. And also that's a way of sort of also doing a cheap production because I don't have to do all the sword combat stuff. It's just something happened and they came back and, oh, why you have a tooth in your hair? Like that kind of stuff that's the live show kind of fun of doing that.
Right.
But when it comes down to it, I sort of have a rough idea of like act 1, act 2, act 3, like sort of where things are going to go. But I tend to write it more like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign where I know what's going to happen and I want to see how they react to it. So I don't go in thinking about references or what the ladies are going to do or any of that kind of stuff. I just say, this is what's going to happen in this scene. And then I sort of transcribe what they do. It's a weird part of writing where you sort of have to I just basically transcribe as I don't feel like I'm creating as that's happening. I'm just sort of listening to them talk and just writing down the things that they say. Because there's very few times where I'm like, where I'm in a scene where I'll just stop and go, now what would they do here? It's all just like, oh, got to keep up.
That must be nice.
It doesn't work. Unfortunately, doesn't work for everything. This is the joy you get when you've been able to do 5 seasons. However, I haven't even counted how many episodes there have been with the same group of actors and stuff too. Is that I know exactly what it's going to sound like. For the most part, they always come with things that surprised me, and even some of our guest actors I didn't anticipate, and got some stuff back that I did not expect at all. But they are. I've even told the story before of I've woken up to the ladies having a conversations. Like I'm in bed and I'm just laying there like, I really like to get some more sleep, but okay. All right. You guys want to talk? All right. I just have to like sit there and then, right. and then wait until like, okay, now I need to write this down because that was pretty good.
Sidebar question. Do the ladies in your head, does your head voice of each of them sound like the performances that you capture out of your cast?
Mostly.
Is that because you've heard them for so long?
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, it's sort of the head versions. It's sort of like the difference between like, I guess like the live action version. Then whenever like Marvel will do like live version, and then they'll do an animated version. They're still playing the same characters, but there are different actors doing them. But they're doing they're trying to be sound alike. So it's sort of that, Mickey Mouse sounds one way an animated thing and one way in the parks. So it's a little bit that. So it's like, it's close, but it's not quite the same. But it's that weird chasing of perfectionism thing where I'm like, because that's where the directing side comes in a little bit. I'm like, no, she'd actually say it a little bit like this, which got to be fun when we did the body switching episode, is that I got to listen to Shaw teaching Kara how to be Goldie and vice versa.
Yes.
Like I was sort of like, we did a lot of rehearsal and a lot of directing and a lot of run throughs of that too, but they were sort of having to teach each other what it is that they do. And I had to tell them how I hear it in my head, the rhythms of that. So like I'm teaching them the way that I write it in terms of like, like the way that Goldie speaks is very like staccato. It's like, what? Come on. Seriously? Are you? No, come on. No, really? Are we gonna like, ba, 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 ba. But like the way that Zinnia talks is always very flowing and very much like, why, like we need to make sure we get out of here. Like, without taking the French accent,
Sure.
she's a very thing. And like, it's like, so you have to there's the difference in the way that they had to teach each other sort of their individual rhythms of how they do the characters. And it was like, that was fascinating for me, just like being front row of like, oh, this is really good.
Yeah. And they nail it.
And so well.
Yeah, they really nail it. And you can actually tell how, the end result, it feels effortless because I think they know each other so well, both as performers, as characters, hearing themselves together. It's, there's a lot of water under that bridge. It's fascinating to me that you chose to do a body switching episode.
That was the one that I had in the back of my head. I'd been thinking about it for a long time. And I even had been like, would this be cool with you? Could you do this? And they were sort of
like, they were game for it. They'll do anything. Clearly.
There are lines. I found a couple of them. But that was the one where I had to be like, I'm like, this is a big ask. This is a big investment. And that was the one that I had, and then I had not anticipated that. And then as I sort of had broken down the things, I realized there was this moment. I'm like, oh, you know what? I figured out what the gimmick was in terms of like, because the part of it is that if you switch all three of them, then it gets really confusing about who is who. And so I wanted to switch two of them. And then I was like, oh, but that means that Anastasia doesn't have as much fun to do. So I'm like, and then once I have figured out, oh, she could be doing, what she would end up doing is like, has to play another character essentially to try and snap them out of this. Then that's when it like snapped in, like all three. I was like, oh, now I can do it. And I realized there's a place in the season when F had been injured and they were all sort of like recovering. There's like this quiet moment where I'm like, I could put that in there and just really screw with them at a time that they're already on fields.
Yeah. Well, and you get all three characters doing something out of character.
Yes.
At the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
really
a lovely moment. Well, I think you've got a couple of opportunities of these. The way I characterize them is sort of episodes within episodes, right? We have the kind of Valentine Vixen. There's a very meta narrative in the Lucidity, right? You play with a lot of storytelling convention this season, and the only thing I felt was missing was a time travel narrative. What gives, Kyle? Kidding. That part's a joke.
We did go back in time.
We did.
In the finale, like we did go back, so you get to see that, but you don't get to see the people from now interacting.
Right. You did manage to maintain stakes through all of these more fantastical sort of toy sort of toy maker narratives that I see. It just felt like you were having a lot of fun. This comes naturally too, or did you stake out, like you were talking about with the body switching thing, the body snatching thing, that we're going to anchor a couple of interesting ways to approach these characters, because season 5, we've earned it.
Yeah, that was part of it. It was sort of like, okay, you've come this far. Now I can pull this off. Like, I don't like, if doing a body switching episode in the first season is like, you barely know who they are. Even they barely know who they are. But by this point, I feel it's enough that, yeah, if that's your first episode, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what to tell you. But the rest of those, I feel like we have earned enough goodwill that we can do that, and to play with some of those tropes that everybody does, and to do them in our own way. But thank you for that compliment of like trying to like keep that going, because that was very conscious in my head. Is like, this can be very ridiculous. So that means I also need to make the emotional stakes at that level, so that it's not, I mean, there's some that there's more farcical and some that are more emotional. But I want to try and keep the ratio between those two really close, because that was something which, and we talked about this a little bit on Craft and Chaos, our other podcast, where when they went to California, like that trip, that was the one that I, sort of left all restraints behind. And I was like, okay, what would it be if I allowed myself to tell whatever story in swashbuckling any way I wanted it to? And that was the one I felt like the emotionality of it matched the action. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that I could do that. And now that's all I want to do. So that, and every time I craft all these things, when I think of whatever the big idea is, it's evil. It's Saffron's secret writing gets exposed, and then there's these prudish people who want to stop it, or whatever. That I want to have like it's not just like it happened. It's like no, this is really uncomfortable for her because it's putting her in a place she doesn't want to be. But then still having the meta narrative of like, now we also have to have, she's playing a different part, and it's at a bookstore and there's all these people around and she has to perform this thing that she's embarrassed about. It's that sort of stuff of like, I want to push them to their emotional places, but also still have fun and do, have the whimsical stuff, the silliness at the same time. So that's where I get the juice.
I'm glad you brought up the secret writing project. The way I had made that note was, Kyle, this is what I would have said had you not already broken the seal. Kyle, we all write what we know. What mature woman do you know who's writing erotica?
Well, I'd like to point your direction to AO3, Archive for Her Own. There are so many wonderful writers of erotica out there, and a lot with fan characters and stuff too. I am not in that thing. I tried once, and I was like,
to write erotica.
Yeah, I was like, I don't have the adverbs for this. I can't. I was like this. I don't know what I'm talking about. I read some stuff and go, wow, like they really found it. So you'll never read the Embers Adventure of Valentine Vixen because I don't know how to write it. But but having that out there and seeing a lot of hearing reports of essentially of people who, when they get into their 50s and 60s, suddenly go, oh wait, I could just write whatever steamy stuff I want.
Whatever's in my head.
It's that suddenly they go, oh wait, my parents aren't paying attention to me anymore. I can do the stuff that I wasn't supposed to do. And I sort of wanted to play that out with Saffron as someone who's even now, this freewheeling queer woman moving through the world with her, her wife. She still is carrying around some of this stuff from how she grew up. And I wanted to sort of show that she's still working through some of that stuff too.
Yeah. I very much want to talk about production and the process, but sure. I can't transition away from story without talking about this crushingly epic, surprising, fantastic finale. I am delighted that I can cheat the system and hear the member version, which is the complete finale, not in pieces. That just hearing the story of how that finale sort of evolved between us in text was a constant journey for me, a constant roller coaster. What fresh hell hath Kyle brought upon himself in creating this epic finale? I want to know the story behind this finale because it's beautiful and it leaves me on one hell of a cliffhanger.
Yeah, which I gotta tell you, Kara, our Goldie hates cliffhangers, and so when I originally, it went through a bunch of different versions. So this actually will be a good thing to pivot into production because this was the episode where the different hats I wear were not in agreement with each other. So essentially, it's a weird thing when you're sort of the main creative force of a thing like this, where you're doing all this stuff. You don't have to convince anybody of anything, except maybe once in a while I have to talk an actor into being like, no, I'm telling you this will work. But like when I sit down to write it, writer Kyle is a very different person than producer Kyle, than editor Kyle, than this one you're talking to. So like he doesn't care about casting. He doesn't care about production. He doesn't care about sound effects. He's just telling the story. So like when I sit down to write it, I'm not thinking about, I know this actor, they'd be good for this role. I write the character, then go, who could I get to play this one? It would be smarter if I did it the other way, but I don't.
Sure.
And then the same thing is like when I'm like, okay, so they're hanging over a bubbling pit of molten steel, and there's a fight happening way off in the distance. How are you going to do that production wise? Yeah, that's his problem. Like when I'm writing, it's just pure like this is what the story is, and that like let those guys worry about it, even though those guys are this guy. And then so when I wrote it, when I started writing about it, the gag was essentially that. So when you meet Iris, the idea is that you're supposed to think that she is F. And so one of the things I originally had an F name I was going to use. And then along the way, I fell out of love with it. And so that's why I ended up sort of switching it up and making it that it was this Irish battle cry. And so then I was free to use whatever name I want. And I could do this gag. I could have it be so that when you meet them, you meet Iris and you realize that she is like a sort of a reflection of Saffron. She's a Saffron that went a different direction. They met and then they went off a different range, which is like sort of a perfect supervillain setup in terms of like they were like it's the how many times have we seen that with Dr. Doom and Richards,
and she has like a whole life
Superboy, right,
of villainy to bounce off of, right?
Yeah.
She has an unsettled home life as an adult.
Yeah. And so we see Iris as that they went to school together, and they're also I put in that she's a sword fighter, like all of these things that to make people think. And the nice thing is I didn't have to sustain that over multiple episodes. The thing is I just had to convince you of that for like half an hour, right? and then pull the rug out from under you. So like that was part of it. I was sort of like, do I put this at the start of the season and then like have it pay off later? I'm like, no, it has to, like, this is all going to be, for whatever reason, it all had to be right here. So then that's when I started that, I started like, okay, so it's going to be Iris as someone Saffron knew and maybe loved and had a relationship with her, this little girl who you don't really think about, and then sort of the crotchety old lady who also lives with them, who's was never going to be like sort of a contender for this. Sure. And then it played out. But once I started writing that, it's anyone who's like a professional producer or anything would come in and say, all that has to go. Like your main characters don't show up until like page 25. What are you doing? But I was so charmed by them, and I was so enjoying this homey domestic thing that they had, this three women, mother, maiden, crone, like the three of them together in this little inn in Ireland and having this charming, cozy little life that it just kept going. It just kept going. I was just like, I just enjoy. And then she started telling the story of how they met. Dramatically, it should have been a flashback and it should have been the two of them playing it, but I didn't want to do that anymore. I was so charmed by it. And I wanted the audience to sort of have the same feeling that Aster gets, which is she's telling the story. We don't know if it's 100% true, but we're also sort of hearing Iris's version of this story, of the legend of Saffron, because that's part of it, is that Aster is in love with this legend this impossible person that there's no way this can be real. Like she's talking about like, oh yeah, I went to school with Batman. You know, like this. Like,
Right.
Did I not tell you that I kissed Zorro once? I mean, like it's that. You're like, what?
Setting the bar high.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, how could you possibly live up to this? And so then by the time they show up, then it's a whole nother thing. It's like, oh yeah, now we're seeing the younger versions of the characters that we love, and now they're interacting with these two. And then there's this, you know, there's mystery and there's disappearances and cursed pirates and all this other, you know, typical sort of swashbuckling kind of adventure. But then it ends in a very different way where things don't go as they thought. And then it ends in a way where you kind of have to go, but why would Iris be coming back for revenge? It doesn't make any sense. And then that's when you sort of, then I pull the other one. So originally that the penultimate episode was going to end with Aster showing up, crashing through the light, pulling Goldie onto the roof and being like, prove that you're worth it. That's where it ended. And so the next episode was the confrontation with the three of them afterwards, but it came in short. So like the first episode came in about 75 minutes, like 75 pages or so. And then I wrote the other one and it came in about 20 pages, which is like the length of like a first season episode. And I was like, I can't do this by itself. And like, it just makes sense to have it be one long continuous episode. That was producer me. So like writer me had the different idea. Producer me went, no, these should be together. But editor me, when I was putting it together, was like, there are like 3 natural breaks in the thing that you could easily cut to make it a part 2, part 3, part 4. And I had not seen that at all along the way. We recorded that for like 2.5 hours one night. Like that's cruel.
Yeah. Well, and I want to talk about that
because union standards. Like I think I could be excited for that. I mean, even like professional voice actors have to take a break, but I was like, we can do this. But I'm never going to do that to them again. That's director Kyle, and that guy's got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, right. He's got work to do.
So that's what it came out to, is that like the members get the entire like the full movie version of it, and then for everyone else, I broke it up into easily segments so that you can, you know, decide how you want to consume.
But you know what about those segments? That actually is interesting, because some of those segments, it had me thinking of Mythic Quest, right? Where you'll be in the story and suddenly you'll get this side quest where they're talking about people in a completely different part of their lives. And that's the sweet nugget that you get this week. Right. And that's kind of the feeling you get. Like I get a little bit of, you know, what am I watching? Am I in Bridges of Madison County or Electra? Like it could be either one. And we're getting a sweet kind of just a sweet taste of a different time in their lives. And that part was a fantastic reveal, that it wasn't just about Iris, and it was about this honeymoon, this engagement, this delightful love story that evolved over the course of the sort of cinematic version. I absolutely loved it. So you broke your actors. Let's talk about that collaboration process, especially because this season you have secrets.
Yeah.
How do you handle secrets in your collaboration with the actors?
They find out when they read the script.
Okay.
They don't know anything more than before. They didn't know who F was until they read that finale script.
And when did they read the finale script? Like, do you give them pages like out of the script that they don't know around their parts like Marvel does? Or
no,
do you just give them the whole thing?
I give them the whole thing.
Okay.
Like they everybody, all the actors. I used to do that. I used to pull the pieces out. And sometimes I will do that if like that script was especially long. That was 90 pages over too. And there were some people who were only in for one scene. And I was like, I'm not going to say, here's a 90-page script. Turn to page 75.
Right.
So I did pull those out and give those to the actors so they could just have their parts. But whenever I have for the ladies, I let them read the entire thing, even the stuff they're not in. Just because I want them to have the context. I want them to see sort of what I'm doing. I that's one of the things I actually have a big issue with Marvel. When I heard some of the actors don't even get to know who they're in the scenes with or what the other lines are, I was like, what are you doing? These are actors. Like, You didn't hire them for their faces. You hired them for their talents. Let them do what they're good at. But hey, that's we are literally standing on my soapbox right now. So I guess I could go on, but I won't. But that's not the way I run my operation.
You take your time.
But one of the things with actors why that really surprised me this season, though, was for the most part, they're all great. They're like, oh, this is really good. I really like this one. Or like, a lot, they'll just be like, Kara is the most emotional of the three of them. I think she wouldn't mind me admitting that. So she's the one she's like, well, I only cried twice at this episode and stuff like that. So she skews the thing, which it always makes me feel really good of like that. I actually still, after all these years, she reads the stuff and is affected by it emotionally. But what surprised me is there was an episode. It was episode 5 for those who favor fire. That's the one where the ladies are the two of them are suspended over the fire pit. We're sort of, and the fight is happening off the distance. Like we're not in that. They're sort of having to be there. And I thought that was an interesting gimmick for an action adventure show of making two of your characters immobile so they can't go anywhere and they have to just talk.
Right.
So I wrote it and it came in really short. Like I went like, yeah, I'm going to add a lot of clanging and explosions and whatever is that, but
not that much clanging.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's only so much you can do especially when I established the characters being silent because I didn't have the voice actor cast for it yet. And that I wanted to just, and I wrote it and I was like, oh, this doesn't work at all. And so then I added more stuff onto it and it made it a little more like, that doesn't work at all. And so then I added another little piece onto it. And it finally got to the point where I was like, okay, it's hitting like half an hour. I think I'm like, that's good enough. But like when I looked at it, all I could see were the stitches. Like it was just for me, it was just Frankenstein. Like it was all I could see was like, oh yeah, I had this. Like this goes on way too long and it shouldn't. It was, I thought I'm like, every season has to have its loser. Like, you can't ever, there's, and like you have to go, sometimes it's just about feeding the machine. And like, this was just getting to the next one. I knew the next one that was coming up was going to be a banger. So I was like, okay, because we're bringing, Mrs. Dubair was heavily focused on the next one. I'm like, always a winner. So I was like, it is what it is. And so I sent it out and both Shaw and Kara went, this is incredible. Like Shaw, who's usually just like, oh man, this was a really good script, went, I think this is the best script you've ever written. And I was like, really? And I had to go back and look and go, really? And so it was, it goes to show like, you never know really how it's going to be. Like I saw it as just a random collection of things all put together, but she saw what I was doing. She saw the whole script and it really affected her. And she is the one who's not even heavily featured in that one. Like she's sort of off of it too. So like she's even talking about stuff that happens with the other characters, like, her wife and her best friend, quote unquote. And so that really meant a lot to me too. So and when I put together, you can even hear it in the recording. Kara was crying during like her big scene where she thinks she's going to die. And so you can, and we record, she's like, I can give you one without crying. I'm like, nope,
that's the one.
Like Goldie would be crying in this moment and you're having an honest emotion and we're going to capture it. I'm like, if you're fine with me putting it out there, if like you're okay with people hearing you literally crying, and she was, so that's the one that made it out there. And so when I cut it together, I was like, ooh, you know what? It's pretty good.
It's pretty good. Yeah, it's a great episode. It's a great episode, and it fits I'll give you a reference that I know you'll appreciate. It gives me the Strange New Worlds vibe, right? Yeah. Where we're able to take some wacky swings this season, some body switchy swings, and come back around to actors being able to give that kind of performance in that kind of moment. And it's really very, very special.
Thank you. I take it as a high compliment because I really love that show because it's a lot of Star Trek can be hitting the reset button, which is always something I've been against. Like my characters change and learn and evolve. And so too, I get frustrated when Star Trek doesn't until like sort of post Discovery, and Strange New Worlds, I think, is the perfect amalgamation of all of that, where all the characters are allowed to remember things that have happened to them and how it affected them, even though they are in roughly the same place when each episode starts.
Yeah.
So I take that as a very high compliment.
An interesting thing looking at you, I would not expect you to be a guy who is, through his writing, such an incredible advocate of storylines around women supporting women and also able to call each other out in a voice that feels to me as a man authentic, delightful. Also such an advocate behind LGBTQ presentation in a way that is authentic and delightfully out of context, seeing it in the past. I'm wondering what you've learned about yourself this season as your journey on this path has evolved.
People throw around the word hero too much. No. I honestly, that's one of the things where it feels so natural to me to do this kind of stuff that it always feels strange when I was at a panel in the audience, not on the panel, listening to all of these things talking about all the different shows and queer shows and representation and getting the word out and all that stuff. And it took me like halfway through the panel before I went, oh, I have one of those. I was just doing this. I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. I'm like, oh, wait, I'm also part of this conversation. I'm also in this thing too, because that's the thing is I don't tend to think of it in terms of like label first. I tend to think of it as human first, and then do that. But I mean but that even is a point of privilege. The thing that is the sci-fi-ness of this whole thing is that this is a world where that bigotry doesn't exist. So that's like my sci-fi twist, my alternate reality thing is that Saffron's parents didn't dislike her because she was queer. They disliked her because she wasn't doing what she was told. And that was the choice I made along the way of like, it's never going to be about hate groups. Like I was never going to have whatever the swashbuckling version of the Nazis are. Like there's evil, there's bad people doing bad things to people, but it was never going to be because of that particular reason. Like there's so many other reasons to hate people. Why should we just pick this? And so that was one of the things that has just been essentially one of the guiding principles of this is that this was always going to be a show about queer people in multiple different kinds of relationships, and we've seen multiple different kinds of relationships along the way. And I was going to say, I'm not telling every gay story. I'm not telling every queer story, every lesbian story. I'm doing this one, like this particular people, in this particular way. I'm not trying to cover every single base, just saying this is the way things are for them, and this is what works for them. And from now on, and then it just became that was one, and then the other one was that we even talked to us about this when Ryan and I did we did the look back at sort of the origins of swashbuckling in our member feed,
right?
That they were all Saffron and Zinnia are a couple when you meet them, and they will always be a couple. So I'm never going to be doing she cheats on her and now they're broken up, and the Ross and Rachel and we're Sam and Diane, whatever. They're together, they're apart. They're together, they're apart.
There are reasons for them to be separated, but not because of their lack of love for each other, right?
Right, and there's never going to be like a misunderstanding where oh, you betrayed me and now we're divorced and we're going to be separate adventures. Now we come back together and everything. No, like they are a happy couple. And they will go through some stuff and they will have some issues and they will have trial, but they will always be a happy couple. So like in the same way that Sherlock and Watson are always at 221B Baker Street together, Saffron and Zinnia will always be together at the society for as long as I have control of the characters. And I don't plan on relinquishing control of them. Like one of my things is to try and show a loving, committed relationship and how you can still tell interesting stories with that. I get so tired of the trope of they always have to be in conflict. They always have to be apart. You like the Sam and Diane, I guess the Moonlighting. I was trying to remember what the names of the characters were. Like as soon as they got together, the whole show fell apart. It's like, No, they just, and so that was one of the things I went is like this is a loving committed couple, and interesting stories can be told about loving committed couples who are both in the same relationship together. So I have Goldie there to do other like dating kind of stories if I want to, but
which are wonderful. And the whole, we said, we joked about the fact that you're not out there releasing your erotica, but you've written characters with such sexual agency. It's delightfully horny. This
oh yes, yeah. I like to call it baudy.
Yeah,
because
baudy is good. Horny is
that's sort of like exactly. Well, I mean, it is a push case to be made, and I have really pushed the limits a couple times where they're like, ooh, like even the actress is like, you're right at the line. I was like, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's right there.
But you know what? At no point, it's
a hard PG-13, but I don't think we get into R. But I guess it's all in your mind.
No, I don't think so. At no point did it pull me out of the story. At absolutely no point. It is a delightful addition of humor and joy, and frankly, it's not the kind of stuff that we get a lot of. Plain sexual energy and attraction.
Yeah.
Like we just don't, there's always baggage to it. And just like your handling of queer characters, I think you do a fantastic job of showing adults that have natural urges and instincts, and they don't mind talking about it.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was interested because I didn't see a lot of it, especially growing up. Like I can't remember a thing I saw before, I was even say into the 2000s of like two women wildly in love. And I'm not saying that these exist, but they were more difficult to find than they became once the internet sort of broke. And that was sort of, for me, that was like, oh, I haven't seen this before. And so that's when I was interested in writing about this and, not putting any type of thing like I'm going to, this is the way it has to be, but like, let's see how far we can go with this. And and I've talked to the actors, like, are you cool with this? Is this fine? And they think it's hilarious. They think it's funny. And at one point I was like, am I going too far? And I talked to one of my friends who's a member of the LGBTQ plus community, who's a woman who loves women. And I was like, is Zinnia too horny? Like, am I going too far? And she's like, absolutely not. She's like, there are so few female characters who are allowed to be like aggressively romantic the way she is, and not be a bimbo or like American Pie, the object of desire kind of thing. Like she likes what she wants. She has a higher sex drive than her wife, and that's the way it is. I was like, okay. So like that I'm like, okay, good. I felt like I was pushing a little bit too far. Like I was trying to have her be a little too much of a horn dog, but I've had people come up and be like, nope. Like, I am a person like this, or I know a person like this. So it's like, okay, all right. Well,
and especially as we age, and I think Zinnia as a character is sort of aging along with us. Yeah. In some respects, as timeless as she is, she's also, it's refreshing to hear an expression of sexual energy from an adult that we can all see ourselves palling around with, right? It's fun.
She's a dame.
Yeah,
she's not the young ingenue. She's like, it's like she's done some stuff. She's seen some stuff, and she knows what she wants, and she's not gonna go away. I think it's to balance her with Saffron, who I think probably is just as dirty, but doesn't show it. She's much more. She still has a lot of that, like, oh, I can't, like you can see when she's around other characters that aren't her friends. She's not doing any of that stuff. Like Zinnia is full on double entendre, triple entendre, whatever you want to do. And Saffron isn't until it's just the group of them together. Mm-hmm. So that was also a choice too, because it's like, as much as every character is you, like, or me, as I'm writing, like that is a definite thing of like, I will talk to people a different way, like it's code switching. Sure. And like I'm much more Saffron. than I am Zinnia out talking in the world. Like I would never say half of the things, like 3/4 of the things that Zinnia says out in the world, but through this, I can put it out there. But like, to do a live reading of my things, I have a script of me. I'm like, oh, I don't know that I could do that.
I'll clutch my pearls.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my
God, who wrote this smut?
Well, look, I think season 5 was a huge win, but it was also a hard one. And I'm delighted that we're having this conversation from a perspective of what sounds like joy and optimism for that you have some more stories to tell. What is season 6?
Well, I mean, I did leave a big cliffhanger at the end, so it'd be cruel.
I know, but you could wrap that up in a 10-minute episode and just be done with it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's just like an epilogue.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll just extend, like Mythic Quest. I'll just extend the episode.
You recorded an alternate version already.
Oh, yeah, sure. It was just like, hey, maybe don't be mean. Oh, my gosh, you're right.
Dang it.
What have I done with my life? I quit.
So what are you going to tell us?
All right. Well, season 6 is still a ways off. It is probably will be in the fall. I now have the structure of it. So there was something that came to me a little bit later where I was like, oh, now I know that last piece that I was missing. So I know sort of the picture of it. So it's sort of where Aster comes from is like everybody else. I was swept up in the Chapel Roan phenomenon, femininomenon that everyone likes. And I thought about having a character like that who's so brash and so fearless, interacting with my ladies. They follow this nice little trio and everything's calm and everything's nice and the society's, and then to drop a bombshell into that, to be like, okay, you have your principles, you have your ideas, you have your beliefs. What happens when you have to deal with them and face them and confront them every single day with someone who is in your face and doesn't see the world the way you do, but is right there. And so it's that sort of adding that extra little mixture together. Will it come up with something delicious or will it something terrible? Is this the thing that's going to like fracture the whole society, or are they going to be able to swing her back around? I can tell you it's not going to be easy. She's got some damage. It was interesting when we were recording it. When we started it, Shaw said, and we got to the end, she's like, I don't know why that's a surprise. Why is that a twist? She's like, of course they would take her and of course they would accept her. And then when she heard the amazing Chrissy Lenz doing her version of Aster, she was like, oh, she's crazy.
Yeah, she's crazy.
She's like, oh, now I get it. Yeah, that was fun. Chrissy is incredible every time. Right, I throw something at her, she knocks it out of the park in a way I never expected. We worked on that voice for a while, and what it came down to was a mix of Alexis from Schitt's Creek,
Schitt's Creek,
and Regina George. Like those are the two that because she did it. She gave me she does a great just straight up Alexis, and she recorded some of the monologues as that, and I was like, okay, it's good, but I want a little more Regina George in this of like, I am smarter than you. I'm going to be talking to you about it, but you're not going to know how condescending I am until you really listen to what I just said.
Yeah.
Like that sort of feel. And then when she brought it back, I was like, that's it right there. I said, I didn't want Harley Quinn. I didn't want, I didn't want Jinx. Like I wanted something a little bit different. And she came through, and when she's like recording, like I had to cut out all the laughing, the way she would like find extra syllables in words and stuff to do. I had to cut out all the other ladies laughing just because they were so delighted when the full on adult damaged Aster showed up. She's like, what happened to the sweet kid that we just were like half an hour ago we were recording with? So it was super fun.
What are you going to do now, though? Because Chrissy has been such a pinch hitter for you doing a variety of parts. She's practically
that's one of the reasons why
she's a
Mrs.
regular.
That's right. Yeah. Mrs. Dumer is. Yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to do. Is like I'd always wanted to do this kind of a story. Like I'd always had this idea like that there would be a fourth that would come in and upset the apple cart. And for a while there was going to be Equity Electric, but then Shannon did such a magnificent job with that character, and then her life moved at such a rapid pace that she couldn't really do anything anymore. I'm still friends with her. I still talk to her, but from when she first did Equity Electric, she has moved, gotten married, gotten her dream job, and had 2 kids. And so all in the course of the production of the show. And I was like, you have a lot going on. I think she would have done it, but I didn't even want to ask. So she has come back and along the way and done a couple little things along the way. But I knew I wanted to do this kind of story. And so that's when I basically took the ideas that I wanted to explore and do, and then created Aster essentially to do that job. And so she'll be around. She's going to be around for a while in the next season. And I see season 6 as being much closer to the first season of sort of more Monster of the Week. So we're going to have a lot of sort of people coming in and having to do this, but now the group isn't functioning quite as well as it used to be. And all of a sudden there's this extra factor. They don't have the same rhythms anymore. And so things are that were used to be easy are going to be a lot more difficult because they all have lessons to teach and lessons to learn. And there's also a new threat that's coming at the same time. Because of course things can't be easy in Massalia.
Got to have a threat. Well, it's an interesting, it's a really interesting twist because a lot of what happened in season 6 with our villains, especially I think this season, are systems, right? Are evolving towards systems rather than individuals.
Absolutely. We're going to be exploring that a lot in season 6.
Well, isn't it interesting that how you're talking about this, the system that's being tested and potentially the villainous system is now the quad of the ladies, right? I think that's really an interesting tableau to explore. I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, it's a new, much more organized threat that is coming, and they're probably their most disorganized.
Yeah.
So that's they're already on their back foot. So it just lends itself to some good drama.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely, and I am deeply honored that you asked me to have this conversation with you, to record it. I think that Swashbuckling is a terrific show. I think everybody needs to hear it. And I think when we talk about storytelling, we talk so much about plot, right? Who did what? Who kissed whom? Who stabbed the robot insect with the wittiest turn of phrase?
Once again, that was Chrissy being.
Speaking of Chrissy,
like her, I didn't give her any direction for Aphid when Aphid first showed up, and she came in with that voice, and that's the only reason Aphid shows up again, and will show up again, I'm sure, because I just love what she did. She's so ridiculous.
Oh, Mary! What, I don't even remember the names, but they're so brilliant as they die. Exactly. Just fantastic. So I think that this season just peeled back so much of the good in this story and moved so much forward. It is messy and human and funny and gloriously unresolved. So thank you for Swashbuckling. Thank you for the ladies. And thanks for keeping it going.
I appreciate you sitting down to do this, to ask some questions, because I say these were not planned, as you could tell by my answers. I did not know what you were going to ask, but I knew that you would have interesting questions because you have a different perspective on this. So I was curious to do this. So this was great, like getting the chance to, sort of dig in and show a little bit more of the work, like a little bit sort of what goes into the process and how things get put together. And hopefully I can get all the different parts of my brain working together much better this time, that they can, they don't. So I'm not creating problems for the future one, but no guarantees. As sort of, we're going to be, it's going to be a while before you see more, because like I said, I haven't even started writing season 6 yet. I'm just sketching it out. But the feed will not be idle. So that's the only thing I wanted to let people know. If you made it this far, hopefully you're a fan, and you'll want to stay around. We have a new show that's going to be sort of being our summer show, essentially, that will sort of run for a while. And that is a show that has been in development for a long time. Back in the day, the Swashbuckling was part of another podcast called The Monday Matinee, where I wanted to explore a bunch of different ideas and a bunch of different shows and sort of see what was interesting to people and was interesting to me. And this was one of the shows that had never sort of made it to air. A bunch of them did, and even some of those are now are coming back too. So good ideas never die. But this was one of the ones that I was kicking around for a long time, and now finally is coming to fruition. So it is written by me, but not directed by me, or audio production by me. This is one I sort of handed off to my partner in crime, Ryan Fitzpatrick. So he is sort of the creative force that's keeping this together. I sort of handed him the scripts, and then, connected him with a couple of actors, and then he took it and ran from there. So that is called Buckaroos of the Weird West. And it is the log line is gay cowboys fighting monsters.
It's about time. We've got swashbuckling pirate gay ladies. We need some gay cowboys.
Yeah. Couple fellas out in the Wild West, shooting monsters. Like,
I don't know how to quit you.
Yeah, and it is obviously it is still my writing, so it will have some of the same kind of things, but we're doing a different style where it's not going to be quite as old time radio feel like this. We're doing a much more audio movie style. So the idea is there will be a narrator who will sort of like set up what's going on, and after that, the story just unfolds. There's not a lot of sort of that sort of classic sort of radio play style. Like, it is just sort of, you're just following along the characters and listening to what they do. So there's a lot more sonic work that gets done. So those will be coming out this summer. I would just say I've heard the rough cuts, and they are very good. So I'm interested to even hear myself to hear the final versions. So you'll have multiple episodes of that. It's one story told in multiple chapters. And if you like it, then we could do more, because I already have like the next 6 episodes sort of scripted. Or like,
how many episodes did you hand off to Ryan? How many were you expecting?
I believe it broke out as 5 episodes. It's very, hopefully people will enjoy it. And if it is, then we can do more, because, it'd be nice to sort of have something else to give the ladies a chance to rest and then have some other adventures going away.
Everybody needs a break, Kyle. Everybody needs a break.
Exactly. And then we'll be back to, when season 6 is ready, so that you'll all be ready. But the Adventures of Massalia are not even close to being finished.
Outstanding. Thanks for this, buddy. Thanks for your time. Thanks for the good work.
Well, thank you for coming along and doing this. And then to all the listeners, thank you for continuing to support the show. I now, thanks to the brilliance of Pete, I now get to see the numbers. So I used to be screaming into the void, and now I can be screaming into a very specific number.
Refresh.
Yeah, exactly. So you go like, oh, hey, and the numbers are trending in the way we want, which is up. So it's nice to know that there actually are people out there, because for a long time it felt like it was just me and the ladies. Just me. Anastasia and Shaw and Kara and me, and that was it. But then it was like, now the circle has grown, so it's very nice to know that you guys are out there and you're enjoying the show and doing so. So we have a Patreon, so if you want to jump in for even $5 a month, you can hop in for $5, listen to the full uncut version of the season finale, and then,
worth it.
And then and then move on. And that's totally fine. I've done that with myself on a couple of things. While you're there, you can also listen to Ryan Fitzpatrick and I did a whole retrospective on the first 6 episodes of Swashbuckling. You heard a tease of that, I think, on here on the main feed. But we got deep. We get really deep into the nitty gritty and audio production and ideas where all the first stuff came from. And so if you like those, we can do more of those as well. We're sort of waiting to hear the response. But there are things there on our private, if you go to truestory.fm/join.
That'll do it. We've got access to all the plans there. Just look for the Ox Hare plans, and you will be able to join. There are lots of other shows in there too. We've got the history of Cool Time Dice Hour. We've got the Curiosity Codex, which was fantastic. Storywell, ongoing conversations with creators, fantastic. So Ox Hare is the place is what you're looking for. You'll see the Swashbuckling logo right there.
And we're so grateful to True Story FM for handling all that hard lifting nerdy stuff that we don't understand to set up all the websites and the feeds and all that stuff that like as a creative I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm so happy to be partnering with you guys to have a nice stable home where I can work on creating a great show and not worrying about all the other stuff, and making things are lined up and that people are getting their episodes on a regular basis. So we're very grateful for you for giving us a home.
Goes both ways. both ways for sure.
So thank you, everyone. Keep hope alive and join the society. And we will see you further on up the road.